The Flint Dibble approach. That guy embodies what you don't like about academia. You see him physically, he embodies it. It's like that's what it is. It's these weak men, these weird, kind of bitchy, weak men.
Hey there, Joe. I just found out yesterday that you ridiculed my appearance in front of millions of people on your podcast. Here I am. I have had for the last, 6 hours in the hospital to consider this while I get treated for my stage 4 cancer with an infusion. You know that I've been fighting cancer for the last 4 years. You've mentioned it to millions of people on your podcast.
All right. I, like many of you watching right now, at one point in time spent countless hours listening to the Joe Rogan Experience, especially way back when the show was simply just him, a guest, and a blunt, without getting force-fed any weird, half-baked, anti-woke political ideas. But back in the day, it really felt like you were just a fly on the wall listening to Joe talk to one of the most interesting people that planet Earth has to offer. And with Joe's very simple, direct, conversational interview style, you got to kind of just seamlessly learn the ins and outs of some industry, some field of study that you might not even known existed before listening to the episode. And that was because, especially at the time, Joe was an extremely curious person. Doesn't matter if you're talking about traveling the stars with Neil deGrasse Tyson, hearing the author of Fight Club explain to you just how fucked up his mind really is, or getting existential life advice from Duncan Trussell.
Heartbreak is actually your ego cracking. And the moment that cracks, you're in the experience of truth. And when you're in the experience of truth, that's when you can really become who you are.
And at that point in time, Joe was a self-described idiot. He was not shy about letting you know that he's kind of dumb.
I'm not a doctor. I'm a fucking moron.
And all of this lasted up until right around the spring of 2020 when, some things happened. And if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you know that he is in no way a stranger to a conspiracy theory.
They're fucking killing already more kids, so you're telling me it isn't real when they had a fucking vote in the goddamn fucking Senate?
That's a conspiracy theory.
This was around the time Joe started having all kinds of doctors on. And of course, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've got all the answers to really anything medical at all whatsoever. And again, in total fairness, around this time, he had on all kinds of doctors with all kinds of different perspectives. But I started noticing more and more often, he started having on people with the exact same opinion as him. And this was around the time that, without even realizing it, I started listening to the podcast less and less and less, because there's only so many times I can hear about how he used to be a driver for a personal investigator, what it was like growing up in Boston in the 1980s, or what it means to be one of the lucky 1,000 people that gets to call themselves a professional comedian. And it's kind of ironic that I'm saying this now, because back when I used to listen to his podcast probably every single week, that was around the time that I personally started getting into doing stand-up comedy, getting into martial arts. Around this time, I started noticing him start to severely oversimplify pretty much everything. Every episode just became just straight up anti-establishment equals good and mainstream equals bad on every single topic all of the time. Then I go to check out an episode after a few months, and again, it's the same conversations over and over and over again. Now, Rogan always touts himself as having a very amazing bullshit detector.
My personality that is just immune to bullshit. When bullshit hits me, I go, oh, I know what this is.
And when you mix that level of hubris with him only talking to people who seemingly already agree with him, it creates the perfect lane for some major con artists to just slide their way right in there. And I think for me and many other people, it's not so much about whether or not you have controversial guests on. It's more about your ability to challenge them when they're straight up lying to your face. And with Joe gaining a lot of favor with the general public as kind of a little bit of an everyman, he's the prototypical independent voter, at least that's what it seemed like for many years. Him having some of the hottest and most incorrect takes in the world of politics has made it seem very generally acceptable for the average everyday person to have equally as horrible and underinformed opinions. Joe started having some really bad takes on MMA, which is supposed to be one of the only things he's legitimately an expert in.
I don't think it's necessary.
And how
I think they should be in like a basketball court that's matted up. Have a big space.
I mean, there's no way in hell an open air basketball court is the answer to the problem of not being able to see well enough through a fence.
That's real. That's a real weight. Whether or not that weighs 100 pounds, it might weigh 100 pounds. I don't believe that he has a fake 100-pound weight. He's a big person.
And no, Chris Cuomo cannot lift and just toss around a 100-pound dumbbell as if it's a fake weight, because obviously it is a fake weight.
Sitting at a desk with a dumbbell that says 100 pounds on it, I bought into it. I was like, maybe he's just really strong. I thought he was bigger than he was, and everybody was like, you're out of your mind. Like, there's no way. Are you a moron? Like,
and around this time, I started kind of thinking about how if he's wrong about this, things related to MMA, things related to working out, what else is he wrong about? I, like many other people, fell into the trap of thinking the guy's got a live action fact checker right there next to him all the time. And the great and powerful Jamie does a pretty good job at calling things out when Joe's off base until Joe just doesn't give a anymore. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to see him get live action fact checked and then just throw up his hands and say, yeah, you know what? I don't like these facts.
I didn't get into the article, but they were saying that they were trying to pass a bill that would outlaw you growing your own food in Australia. Passes bill.
I mean, I know what to look for. Nothing's coming up. The closest thing I could find was something like this. That's not
new
what
food. No,
you
it's
were
not.
saying.
It's not New Zealand. It's in Australia.
I know, but this is close.
It's got to be a real thing. It seems too good to not be.
It's obviously.
I typed in outlaw growing food in Australia, and not a single thing comes up except for that, which was a false thing.
I can't find it either.
Oh,
Damn
no.
it! Better not be fake. It might be fake.
And that brings me to one of the more sad situations that I came across pretty recently. Joe infamously had a debate between Graham Hancock, who is a man who's made some very entertaining content, and a man named Flint Dibble, who is an actual real-life archaeologist, who I believe comes from a family of archaeologists who, again, has spent his entire life obsessed with real-life, evidence-based archaeology. And in this debate, surprise, surprise, the real life actual archaeologist does better than the guy that creates very admittedly entertaining content about theoretical civilization that there's no real proof ever existed, despite how fun it is to believe. And again, because it is so fun to believe, Joe, after spending about 4 hours talking to each of these guys and reviewing all of their evidence, or in the case of Graham Hancock, the lack of evidence,
who were with us were intrigued by this.
Do you have any more photos of that are maybe more convincing?
No, that's what I've got.
and ultimately just decided, you know what, it's more fun to believe Graham, and Flint's not fit enough. And as crazy as that sounds, that is legitimately what he had to say about the situation.
That guy embodies what you don't like about academia. These weak men, these weird, kind of bitchy, weak men.
Now, I probably put this clip at the very beginning, the intro of the video, because it's just so crazy. But this is what he's become now. It's just a caricature of himself. It went from asking questions to now making statements about things. Mind you, he is not at all spent real time and effort studying. And I guess this is the end game where, you know what, Flint, you don't have huge arms and a six-pack, and you've never spent a day on the jiu-jitsu mats. So you can go ahead and take your research the fuck out of here. That's basically his perspective. And all of this is a little funny. I mean, you know, it's a little bit of a ridiculous situation until you find out that Flint is a man who is battling cancer and decided to take time out of his day to go on the biggest or one of the biggest podcasts in the world to spread his love for real, authentic archaeology, just to get made a fool out of and made fun of for being sick. And then, of course, there's no way to have a conversation about the evolution or de-evolution of the Joe Rogan Experience without mentioning the extremely hard pivot into politics as of late. And how can I forget the Kash Patel episode that was fucking ridiculous? This is one where, at the very least, I noticed people in the comment section actually speaking up about how total this whole situation was. And it was a little sad to see Joe, someone who is very famous for banging on the drums, trying to get somebody to look at or look into this conspiracy theory, now get the opportunity to talk to the most senior level ranking person in all of the FBI just to get fucking lied to and told that that same original story that you heard years ago, yeah, buddy, you're gonna have to stick with that one because you're not getting another one.
Do you really think I wouldn't give that to you if it existed?
And watching Joe just kind of sit there and not push back or question it at all kind of makes you realize exactly where he's at right now. He's become mostly just a mouthpiece to a bunch of ideas that Joe himself, as recently as 10 years ago, would have been very much against. And then, of course, one of his best pals, Elon Musk, coming out during that episode and proclaiming that Donald Trump is on the Epstein list, just for Joe to react as if he found his two daughters arguing.
It's going to come up because it's been going on since we've been recording here. Elon and Trump seem to be in a bit of a spat, Joe. You want to check the tweet that Elon just put out a little bit ago?
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation
What
between
is he?
Elon
Have a
and Trump.
nice day, DJD. Someone should take his phone away.
And then, of course, Joe playing cover for Elon's very clear and obvious sig heil by saying, oh, he just did it on accident. Oh, you know how that happens. I mean, it's so easy to mess that up, right? I mean,
There's so many examples of people saying my heart goes out to you.
Sure,
you did
sure.
it with a little enthusiasm that probably wouldn't be recommended.
I think a lot of people were caught off guard when Joe not only had Trump on the podcast, but ended up endorsing him. And I think this caught people off guard because Joe has previously very often publicly stated that he would never have Trump on his podcast and would never want to help him.
And by the way, I'm not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form. I've had the opportunity to have him on my show more than once. I've said no every time. I don't want to help him. I'm not interested in helping him.
The night is still young. We'll see.
But recently, I watched a clip from a long time ago of Joe talking about the Donald Trump phenomena all the way back in 2016. And when you watch this conversation, you can really quickly realize that Joe hears the criticisms. Joe can make logical sense of the criticisms. But to him, Trump was a disruptor, crazy guy who's funny. And in Joe's world of being a professional comedian, that's kind of all that matters.
People are so goofy. We're so WWE'd out that you can get this guy. You know, I mean, this is where we're at. We've got a guy. I told him the wall just got 10 foot higher. Right. Yeah, everybody gets crazy. Like, how could you say that?
And the issue with the Trump interview wasn't that he had Donald Trump on. Donald Trump obviously has been on countless public outlets in his political life, and obviously well before that as well. The issue was that he routinely got absolutely lied to and didn't even attempt to push back at all. And I think that when you really analyze what happened here, it forces you to come to terms with something a little sad. It's not that he refused to push back because he just was unaware that he was being lied to. It's that he doesn't really care about these lies. These lies are not very important to him. Trump proclaiming that the election was stolen, and he's got so much evidence, you wouldn't even believe how much evidence.
Papers that you would not believe, so many different papers.
And when Joe asks to see it, Trump just hits him with the, yeah, I'll get back to you in a couple of weeks.
How do you think you were robbed?
Well, what I'd rather do is we'll do it another time.
Now, I know more recently when I tried to take a look and see, well, I wonder who he's gotten on his podcast recently. I got the very unpleasant surprise that he had on a guy who is a fairly staunch defender of, again, same way I'm not a doctor, I'm not a historian, but we can find countless videos of actual historians completely and totally debunking his claims that are factually, historically inaccurate and perpetuate some really dark, disturbing, and generally hateful ideas.
Churchill wanted a war. He wanted to fight Germany. And the reason that those are great power games, and
it's not a power game. They had a defensive agreement with Poland to protect the integrity of Poland as a country against German aggression. And they honored that agreement.
The reason I resent Churchill so much for it is that he kept this war going when he had no way to go back and fight this war. All he had were bombers. He was literally, by 1940, sending fire.
By 1940, Churchill didn't even become prime minister until May of 1940. And again, it happened at the same moment Germany was invading France and Belgium and the Netherlands. This was not something that was going on after Churchill became prime minister.
And what was the motive?
This is insanity. Absolute insanity. See that smile? That smile betrays the fact that there's some conspiracy theories shooting around in this tiny pea-sized brain of his about why Churchill would do this. I guarantee you what he thought in that moment was it was the Jews, but he's not going to say that.
That was the wryest smile I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Say what you think.
Well,
you've been doing it so far.
But then you get into, why was Winston Churchill such a dedicated booster of Zionism from early on?
There you go. Remember I said a minute ago when he smiled and I said what was bouncing around in his mind was it was the Jews. And now he finally admits it. That's what this is all about.
And the same way Joe used to routinely call himself a moron that no one should listen to, I don't think that just automatically absolves him of any guilt. Because I do think that it looks like he is a bit of a useful idiot. He's being used by others to have the perfect platform for them to just spread ridiculous bull that makes no sense. And I think that he keeps leaning on this idea that he can throw his hands up and, hey guys, I'm just a comedian, it doesn't really matter, when all of a sudden these things are having real life consequences, and he seems a lot more shy about pushing back against some of these things than he was supporting them. Joey Diaz was on his podcast recently, and in the middle of this long-winded tirade, Joey Diaz had to stop him and just say, hey dude, what the fuck are you talking about?
In 3 generations, they could be in real trouble. Like, the number of people that will have a grandchild right now is significantly lower than it ever has been before.
That's your question?
Yeah.
The fuck's it got to do with me? What the fuck is wrong with you, Joe?
Because I think about it with, like, civilizations collapsing. I think about it what we've been talking about the whole day.
Yeah, but we don't have to worry about that.
I know. We don't have to worry about it.
This is fucking too
You're
much.
right.
Enough with this shit.
You're right.
And politics, enough.
I know.
COVID is over.
Just have a normal conversation. And Joe kind of just took this one in stride, but I think that he probably should have taken this more seriously and not just laughed it off, because this is one of the rare moments where it looks like he's talking to another genuine person who's not just using him for his platform and telling him what he needs to hear. And then how can I forget the absolute classic story that I'm pretty sure I've repeated at some point in time to someone, which is that at this wild liberal school in California, the kids are just so liberal, they're so woke, that they had to install litter boxes for all the kids that identify as cats. And if you think that sounds like bullshit, well, you're absolutely right.
My friend, his wife, is a school teacher, and she works at a school that had to install a litter box in the girls' room because there is a girl who's a furry who identifies as an animal, and her mother badgered the school until they agreed to put a litter box in one of the stalls. Yeah. So this girl goes into the litter room, or to the girls' room, and urinates or whatever. I don't know if she poops in it. That's pretty gross. People were saying that's not true. It's an internet rumor. So I contacted him again, and I said, tell me exactly what she said and contact her and find out. She no longer works for that school. She works for another school. She contacted the other school. She didn't get a response. I don't think they actually did it. I think there was discussions about doing it because there was one particularly wacky mother, but it doesn't seem that there's any proof that they put a litter box in there.
Not only was there absolutely zero evidence of this ever happening, this story can very legitimately be traced back to its origin, which is just some random dickhead on 4chan. And Joe did not just repeat this story. Joe said that he had a friend whose kids were going to this school, and that's how he found out about it, which, as we know now, is a complete and total lie. And then you gotta ask yourself, why would he lie about knowing the person whose kid goes to the school? Because when it comes to him and a lot of his more recent guests, the truth does not matter. All that matters is whether or not the story can help push an idea or an agenda that you think is more important than the truth. And obviously, the problem here is that he lied. He just straight up lied about that. The other problem is that when you frame yourself in this way as someone who is speaking to millions of people with a fact checker sitting there right next to you, you make it seem like you know what you're talking about. How many people went through their normal everyday life thinking that this was true, maybe even saying this to someone, only for that person to fact check it, realize that it's wrong, and call this avid listener of yours a moron because they made the unfortunate mistake of thinking that you knew what the fuck you were talking about. And of course, the attitude for a lot of these people is going to be, okay, yeah, maybe this one's not true, but I'm sure something else somewhere similar is true. I mean, it's not about the truth. It's not about the facts. It's about these weird ideas and making sure as many people get the warped version of what actually happened as possible, as to, again, promote your ideal worldview. I mean, you get the picture. I mean, the guy is routinely off base, and it's always in the same direction. It's always in the right good, left bad dichotomy that is just stupid. But what else can you expect? I mean, the guy spent the better half of the last 5 or so years just getting lied to for hours on end by whichever billionaire thinks that Joe's dumb enough to believe their newest set of absolutely baseless claims. So in conclusion, look, it's not like I hate the guy, and it's not even that I think he's necessarily all that bad of a guy. I do think it's important that he's actually made some attempts to push back on a lot of the really crazy going on in the world today. Making any effort at all whatsoever is better than making no effort. Genuinely don't think he's this crazy malicious guy that wants to see pain and destruction in the world around him. When you take into account the millions of followers and subscribers and listeners, the comedy club that he opened up in Austin, Texas, where the guy walks around like he is the king of the city, and he's only having on podcast guests that 100% agree with his opinion. I think all that's kind of gone to his head a little bit, and now we got a guy who is, again, a self-described idiot speaking to the masses as if he knows what he's talking about. I mean, it is a little poetic. The guy always going off about echo chambers, kind of accidentally, I guess, backed himself into one of his own. But who knows? Maybe he's just one really good fact check away of realizing that he's been regurgitating a whole lot of and with his immense amount of fans, listeners, subscribers, it's not like he can't at some point turn it around and maybe still use his voice for good and be a little bit of a cautionary tale of how just because someone you know that you like told you something, just because you read it on the internet, just because this conspiracy theory fits like a puzzle piece to all the other ones that you already believed, doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. Thanks for watching.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.